Welcome to our new session on thyroid and antithyroid drugs. As you know, among the endocrine pharmacology and medicine, thyroid and the related disorders are very common in our community, and this is very important topic itself. You have adequate understanding, I believe, from anatomy, physiology, biochemistry regarding the metabolism related to the thyroid hormones. This is also very important from endocrinological perspective and also pharmacological perspective. So today we going to discuss about this drug, first thyroid and antithyroid drug. So first come into very basic aspects of these thyroid hormones, that they are different precursors like your thyronine, thyroid hormones and other precursors. As you know, the thyroid hormone is biosynthesized in our body in the thyroid gland. Thyroid gland itself from endocrine perspective is very important because thyroid follicle synthesize thyroid hormone, and there are that parathyroid glands on the backside of the thyroid. They synthesize very important calcium regulating hormone, that parathyroid hormone. And inside the thyroid gland, the C cells is there, they synthesize calcitonin. So very important hormones are there related to the thyroid and parathyroid. Obviously we are focusing on thyroid. So as you know that thyroid gland synthesize thyroid hormones by the process we'll discuss subsequently. But what are the different hormones? That thyroxine, and another hormone is triiodothyronine, that is the ultimate final products that is released from the thyroid gland. Okay, for synthesis of these two hormones we have other precursor, like that iodotyrosine, diiodotyrosine, monoiodotyrosine. Okay, so iodotyrosine or monoiodotyrosine and diiodotyrosine, how they are synthesized? Thyroglobulin is a protein. They contain tyrosine residue in their primary structure, and this tyrosine residue is iodinated, and they subsequently couple to produce thyronine. So thyronine, basically if you look at two tyrosine molecule actually coupled with a ether linkage. So this is a ether linkage, with a ether linkage, and one tyrosine residue attached with that that alpha carbon atom of amino acid. Okay, that actually contain amino group itself. Okay, due to the different position of the attachment, or you can say that substitution of the iodine molecule over the benzene ring, different hormones are produced. Like thyroxine means there are 3 prime 5 prime tetraiodothyronine. So this structure is thyronine. When it is iodinated, become thyroxine or triiodothyronine. So here if you look at this 3 5 3 prime, so there is 3 iodine residue is there. Okay, so as you know, thyroxine is the predominant hormone in the circulation, but triiodothyronine is actually the most potent derivative of thyroxine. So thyroid gland itself produces thyroxine and to some extent triiodothyronine, but in the peripheral tissues, maximally thyroxine is converted into triiodothyronine. So these are the some basic biochemical or chemical aspects of the thyroid hormone. Okay, now some structural features, structure of the thyroid hormone. So again, the primary molecule is thyroxine. So two diiodothyronine, when coupled together by ether linkage, they will become thyroxine. So this thyroxine 3,5, 3 prime, 5 prime tetraiodothyronine. There are 4 molecules of 4 atom of iodine. Now it is converted into T3 by deiodinase enzyme. There are 3 isoenzymes of the deiodinase, mainly 1 or 2 is very important physiologically. What is about the role of type 3 deiodinase? They will convert T4 into RT3. This is very interesting basically. So this is called a reverse T3. So this is the predominant pathway. The conversion of the thyroxine to the T3, that means T4 to T3 by deiodination reaction. So look at 3, 5, 3 prime, 5 prime, and here it is 3, 5, 3 prime triiodothyronine. So this triiodothyronine is called T3. Okay, but why RT3 is synthesized? What is the chemical difference? What are the structural difference? Difference is that if you observe this T4 and RT3 difference is that outer benzene ring having 3 prime 5 prime iodine residue, but in the inner ring that that only they have 3 prime that iodine atom is there at the 3 prime position. Okay, but there is no 5 position that iodine actually removed by type 3 deiodinase or dehalogenase enzyme. So this dehalogenase enzyme, they remove that particular iodine residue and it will become reverse T3 or T3 that have very minimal physiological function. That means in our body T4 is converted mainly to the T3 and also reverse T3. When there is excessive amount of the T4 is there, so some of the T4 actually inactivated in this way. That is a normal normal homeostatic mechanism in our body, that active hormone is actually deactivated in the form of RT3 when there is an excess generation of the T3 by this type 3 deiodinase enzyme. So that reverse T3 basically very minimal, very negligible biological activity compared to the T3. Okay, so after this come to our basic physiological aspects or biochemical aspects of the synthesis. So this question you have encountered in your physiology, very important question from physiology. It is very important in pharmacology, and the same question, that synthesis, biosynthesis of thyroid hormone, you will get again the medicine and particularly in pediatrics. Okay, so pediatrics having a long question from physiology, and many of the times the biosynthesis of thyroid hormone is provided. Okay, so what are the steps basically? First and foremost is trapping of iodine inside the cell. Okay, so there is very important transporter, sodium iodine symporter. So they take both sodium and iodide inside the cell. Okay, so due to this transporter, iodine concentration inside the cell may be 10 to 20 times higher than the plasma concentration. That means these transporters selectively concentrate iodide inside the cell, and these iodide come into that luminal aspects. As you know, this is a basal aspects and these are apical aspects. This is a luminal site of the thyroid follicle. As you know that thyroid follicle you have learned in histology. So in the thyroid follicle, these apical aspects, this iodine actually transported by another protein called pendrin. Okay, so by this pendrin helps that iodide which is trapped inside the cell coming into this apical aspect. So it is concentrated here. Okay, so this iodide basically after this iodide actually trapped inside this colloid. This colloid contain very important protein, as you know, thyroglobulin. So main protein in this colloid matrix is thyroglobulin that contain many tyrosine residue in their primary structure. So after iodine trapping, we have a very important step is iodination. So how iodination happen? Important enzyme here is thyroid peroxidase. This is the penultimate enzyme. This is the main enzyme in all this reaction because one enzyme catalyzes many steps here. So this thyroid peroxidase enzyme, they causes activation of this iodide. Okay, so activation of this iodide in the form of generation of that, you know, hypoiodous acid or enzyme linked iodide. Okay, hypoiodous acid or enzyme linked iodide. So that iodide actually is attached to that your tyrosine residue of the thyroglobulin, and there is generation of the diiodotyrosine and monoiodotyrosine. Why this activation is required? Because normally iodide will not attach to the benzene ring, as we have shown that tyrosine having benzene ring. Okay, no, the phenyl group actually having hydroxyl group. So this is the phenyl group. So benzene ring, as you know, they have an excessive, excess pi electron over the surface. So until it is activated of iodide in the form of positive cation, so that actually goes to that benzene ring, and there is a substitution reaction because the benzene ring having excessive pi electron, and this iodide when activated to the I flask, or this activated iodide can attack because it has now affinity towards electron, and they may cause substitution reaction. Okay, so these DIT and MIT which is generated, that is coupled, again the same enzyme, that thyroid peroxidase, again coupling of the DIT and MIT and generation of the T4, maximally T4 and also T3. Okay, now this cell basically causes endocytosis of this colloid inside the cytosol, and inside the lysosome this this T4 and T3 which is generated inside the lysosome, it is actually degraded from that protein molecule itself. Okay, so these are the overall on brief, these are the steps: iodine transport, iodination, coupling, colloid resorption, deiodination of the DIT MIT, which is actually not generating that T4 T3, that iodine actually reutilized again, because iodine is very precious, so iodine actually reutilized again and again. Okay, then deiodination of the T4 to T3, that may also happen, T4 to T3 by D1 D2. Here D1 D2 means actually it is deiodinase enzyme or dehalogenase enzyme, and ultimate secretion from the basal aspect of the cell into the circulation. Okay, so this is the overview of thyroid biosynthesis. This is very important. Why? The different inhibitors of this synthesis acts at the different steps. As you know, as a nutshell, we can say this NIS is very important. They actually concentrate iodide inside the cell. So this step can be inhibited by this anion, actually perchlorate or thiocyanate. Look at that, thiocyanate or perchlorate anion can inhibit this step. Okay, so there are different toxic principles, different pesticides, they contain perchlorate or thiocyanate, they may inhibit this trapping mechanism. Okay, they may present in the food itself. And this iodination and coupling reaction, both are catalyzed by thyroid peroxidase in this colloid matrix. So this can be blocked by this is drug basically PTU, that is propyl thiuracil, and MMI basically methimazole, that we will discuss subsequently. These are anti-thyroid drug, thyroid synthesis inhibitor. These are used clinically, particularly this propyl thiuracil and methimazole, very important drug actually. Okay, so in this section we have understood these steps of biosynthesis and what are the possible targets, what are the points where we can inhibit, by inhibiting that particular step, ultimately the production of the thyroid hormones. Now regarding this, another very important question here is that this iodide, particularly very important thing is that if you give excessive iodide, say potassium iodide, what will happen? They inhibit secretion. They inhibit secretion itself. So if you give excessive iodide, they inhibit this secretion here. The last step, secretion of T4, T3 into the circulation. So this is called thyroid constipating effect. This is called thyroid constipating effect. This effect is also called as Wolff-Chaikoff effect. So this question is asked, if you answer very well, what is Wolff-Chaikoff effect? Wolff-Chaikoff effect is that if you give excessive iodide, to a patient, what will happen? That thyroid gland does not secrete T4, T3 into the circulation. They are in a state of, we call, thyroid constipating effect of excessive iodide. Okay, so this is utilized particularly when we prepare the patient for thyroidectomy operations, or when you prepare patients having thyrotoxicosis or hyperthyroidism. So before surgery we try to assess euthyroidism, or we put the thyroid gland in a mode that does not secrete excess T4 T3 into the circulation, because that is very dangerous situation during surgical procedures. So we prepare the patient by giving Lugol's iodine. Lugol's iodine basically a formulation containing potassium iodine in potassium iodide solution, so that actually inhibit secretion. So in this section we have discussed this portion. Okay, now subsequently we will discuss more regarding every step later in our application portion. Now we have to discuss in very nutshell the regulation of the thyroid hormone synthesis. As you know, hypothalamus, pituitary and thyroid axis, very well known to you, that hypothalamus causes releasing hormone, and from the pituitary release of thyroid stimulating hormone. So these thyroid stimulating hormone very much trophic to the thyroid gland itself. Trophic means in that sense it enhances the uptake of iodide, increases the level of thyroid peroxidase activity, increases the generation of the thyroglobulin protein, increases the reuptake of thyroglobulin by the cell, increases the degradation of the thyroglobulin to the T4, T3. So all the steps basically enhanced. Increases the volume of the gland, mass of the gland, increases the vascularity of the gland. So TSH is trophic in the all the way, and also enhances the conversion of T4 to T3. So if you look at a single cell in our thyroid follicle, how TSH basically acts. So TSH over the TSH receptor on the basal aspect, and this is a G protein coupled receptor that enhances cyclic AMP formation, and that acts by increasing iodination and generation of the thyroglobulin and coupling, and all the steps basically enhanced. Okay, and even causes more expression of this symporter NIS, sodium iodide symporter. And as you know, T4 basically acts as a negative in a negative feedback loop both on the anterior pituitary and also in the hypothalamus. So they inhibit the release of TRA and also TSH. Okay, so this is in nutshell about that thyroid hormone synthesis. Now we have to know something about deiodinase isoenzyme. So this deiodinase enzyme nowadays given very much importance, because you know that T3 at least 10 times more potent than T4, and that is why deiodinase enzyme is very important. So deiodinase enzyme itself causes activation of the T4 to T3 in the thyroid follicle cell and in the peripheral tissues, so like liver, kidney, okay, brain, pituitary, placenta, okay. And there is another type of deiodinase, we have said that D3 type, they causes the inactivation of the T4 to RT3, reverse T3, having very less biological activity, feeble biological activity. Okay, so this creation by this nature of these hormones, you know that in mammals, is basically to maintain a balance between activity and inactivity. Okay, now regarding that pharmacokinetic part, here it is actually the normal physiological metabolism basically. In that sense, here you know that if you thought of the T4, I am focusing on the T4 basically. What are the different steps of inactivation basically? So here you know that ether cleavage, because you know thyrionine having a ether linkage between that, and this ether cleavage, that means formation of the diiodotyrosine. if you do deiodination, there is formation of the reverse T3, T3, T2, T1. So this T2, T1 means the number of the iodine moiety attached to that benzene ring. Conjugation means sulfate conjugation, glucuronide conjugation. S for sulfate, G for glucuronide. So this conjugation leading to inactivation. Then oxidative decarboxylation. Okay, oxidative decarboxylation. So T4K. K means K represent actually pyruvic acid, and that is metabolized to acetic acid. Okay, so you know that T4 conjugated with acetic acid. So pyruvic acid to acetic acid. Okay, so tetraiodothyronine acetate. So similar way the T3 also metabolized. Okay, so these are the basic mechanism. I want to focus on that. What are the mechanism in the body it is deactivated? Okay, so this is one thing by D3 deiodinase, that is one thing. Okay, on the other hand, we have other types of metabolism like ether cleavage, deiodination is one part here, conjugation, and like other drugs, you know, conjugation here, one of the important mechanism, and oxidative decarboxylation. So this is an overview to you that how this hormone deactivated, because this is a hormone and we use the same natural hormone basically as a treatment. So that is why if you know that normal physiology, normal biochemistry more, you will understand better the different thyroid disorders and their management basically. It's a very simple thing, but many important concepts lies behind this treatment rationales and very common disorders management from the physician perspective. Okay, now come to the another important aspects, that how to differentiate of circulating T4 T3. Basically this is important to interpret the laboratory results and to understand the differences in the T4 T3 in the peripheral circulation. Like if you look at the total hormone in the plasma, in the blood, it is very high. You look at T4 level is many times high, but you have to remember that this total hormone means bound form plus free form basically. What are the plasma proteins to which thyroid hormones are bound actually? So the plasma proteins, very important is, you remember, sorry, are plasma proteins are here. On important protein is thyroxine binding globulin. Thyroxine binding globulin, TBG, thyroxine binding globulin. Second plasma protein is thyroxine binding prealbumin, also called transthyretin, and third one is albumin. So most hormone bound to the thyroxine binding globulin, TBG, then thyroxine binding prealbumin or transthyretin, third one is albumin. So albumin is the actually the thyroid hormone bind least to the albumin. If you thought of that fraction of the total hormone in the unbound form, here it is very high. If you compare basically, it is basically 10 times, more than 10 times T3 in the unbound form, and that actually represent the activity of the, that is why T3 is more active, because unbound form of the T3 more than 10 times higher, but total hormone that does not represent the activity, as you know, but ultimately in equilibrium that total hormone, you know that that determine the free form, but thyroxine basically T4 more bound to the different plasma proteins. T3 is not so much high affinity to bound to the thyroxine binding globulin or transthyretin. Okay, serum half life if you consider, it is very high, 7 day to 2 day. You remember in days, no problem, it is 48 hours and it is 7 day, very high. So that is one advantage basically. T4 onset administration is sufficient, but T3 it is usually onset administration is inadequate basically. So we have said from the thyroid gland, T4 100% from the thyroid gland, but only 20% of the T3 from the thyroid gland, and 80% basically conversion of the T4 to T3. Okay, So this is a very important thing. If you assign 1 as a relative metabolic potency of T3, then it is 0.3 is T4. So T3 metabolically is highly active. Okay. So these are some we can say that kinetic property. This is the normal physiological kinetic, or you may say pharmacokinetic property of T3 and T4, because both are drug in that sense. We have preparation of T4 and T3 as a drug. Okay, so this physiology basically we can utilize as a drug. It's similar to the pharmacokinetic property. Okay, now their mechanism of action. How thyroid hormone acts. So thyroid hormone receptor action basically. So here we have to thought of that the classical example, the nuclear receptor mediated action is thyroid. Thyroid, retinoid, they are receptors present inside the nucleus. But if you thought of the steroid hormone, okay, so they are receptor primarily present in the cytosol. After binding with ligand, they migrate into the nucleus for its action. But thyroid hormone receptor primarily present in the nucleus. They are truly nuclear receptor, like your retinoid also having truly nuclear receptor. Vitamin D3 also truly nuclear receptor. Okay. Say inside the cell, many of the times T4 actually taken up by the cell and it is converted into T3 inside the cell in the cytoplasm itself. Okay. Like say feedback mechanism at the level of pituitary. So primarily T4 enters into the cell, they convert it into T3, and T3 ultimately responsible for negative feedback mechanism. But if you thought of that primary action, they also convert it into T3. But you should remember T4 itself having property to bind with nuclear receptor and action. But T3 binding affinity is 10 times, at least 10 times more higher to the thyroid hormone receptor. Okay. Now, people actually identify different subtypes of the thyroid hormone receptors based on the different location in the different organ systems. Okay, like so TR means thyroid hormone receptor, beta 1, beta 2, beta 3, beta 4, different subtypes are there. Okay, so it is this diagram for giving you just a overview. There are different types of thyroid hormone receptors. You may not remember all the subtypes; it's not required for you. But we have to understand this figure. Okay, so thyroid hormone receptor basically it's a nuclear receptor, so that means action mediated through transcription translation process ultimately. So this receptor having 3 domains. Okay, just remember on amino terminal domain is there that varies based on the different subtypes, but constitutive domains are DNA binding domains and ligand binding domains. These ligand binding domains basically differentiate between the affinity of T4 and T3. Why T3 is more active? Because of these ligand binding domain have higher affinity towards T3. Okay, so when there is no ligand, say T4, T3 not present in the cell, this nuclear receptor basically associated with co-repressor molecule, co-repressor protein. So as it is associated with co-repressor protein, the COR represent co-repressor proteins. So co-repressor proteins means they are inactive stage. So they does not able to stimulate transcription process. But when they bind to the T4 and T3, they remove the co-repressor, and this receptor actually dimerizes and associated with co-activator proteins. Okay, so they dimerizes in that sense, in that way they actually polymerize actually with RXR, retinoid X receptor. Here say like steroid, they dimerizes two steroid nuclear cytosolic receptor, they dimerizes inside the nucleus, but here actually they associate with RXR. So one part is thyroid hormone receptor, other part is RXR. RXR means retinoid X receptor. Now they recruit co-activator proteins and enhances gene transcription by stimulating TRE. TRE means thyroid hormone receptor response element. TRE, thyroid hormone response element, like your steroid hormone response element. So here it is thyroid hormone response element. So they activate different lots of proteins and enzymes related to the metabolism, related to the cardiovascular system activity, related to the responsiveness of other hormones, related to the responsiveness of autonomic nervous systems. So many lots of proteins and metabolic proteins are activated basically. Okay, so this is the basic mechanism through which it acts. So it binds with T3 or T4, replace co-repressor after binding, it adhere with RXR, retinoid X receptor, then recruit COA, that means co-activator proteins, bind to the cognate domain, TRE, thyroid response element, enhances gene transcription. Because this DNA binding domain is activated after binding with ligand, in the ligand binding domain, they have zinc finger motif in the DNA binding domain. You know the most of the hormones having that DNA binding domain, most of the times they have zinc finger motif actually. So this is in brief actually, in brief, the mechanism of the thyroid hormone through their nuclear receptor. They have truly nuclear receptor. Others are, we have said, that retinoid and vitamin D. But in that sense, you know that steroid having cytosolic receptor, they migrate actually before action. Now, major clinical effects of thyroid hormones. Major clinical effects of thyroid hormones. This will discuss in very brief in that sense. Okay, so growth and development, very essential. You know, our experiment started the maturation of tadpole, the regression of the tail, development of the neurons. We have our classical, you know, that experiment we have learned in biology. In a culture of tadpole, if you add thyroxine to that their water solution, actually they will mature very early. So from there actually experiment started, and human, we know that growth and development. So this is very important during pregnancy, during developmental period, during embryogenesis, during organogenesis, and also after delivery, after birth, you know, neuronal maturation, organ maturation, intelligence level, very, not only the growth actually, physical growth, it is the development, the finer activity of the neurons, finer motor coordination is, okay, intellectuality. So that is very important. Thyroid. Thermogenic effects. Thermogenic effects, you know, thyroid hormone primarily thermogenic. They enhances the metabolism. They enhances the brown adipose tissue. They enhances the uncoupling proteins in the brown adipose tissue. They uncouple the mitochondrial electrochemical gradient, you know, and generates more actually heat. Okay, so they are thermogenic itself. They increases BMR, basal metabolic rate. In our classical physiological experiments, we can measure BMR, you know, and patients, you know, when there is no sophisticated test like today, we determine TSH level by chemiluminescence method. We determine T4, T3 by immunoassays nowadays. So when there such sophisticated methods are not there, actually physicians used to diagnose thyroid hormone deficiency by measuring BMR by Roth's apparatus, and from the BMR measurements indirectly we will actually assess, because thyroid hormone itself is thermogenic. Cardiovascular effects, in short, they enhances cardiovascular effects. If you thought of the heart, the SA nodal generating potential will be increased, conductivity will be increased, myometrial contraction is increased. Just one simple example, how SA nodal impulse generation potential will increase by activating or by generating more funny current, funny sodium channel expression actually enhanced. How their myometrial contractility increased. How? By more expression of SARCA, sarcoplasmic reticulum calcium transporter protein 2. By more expression of this protein, by inhibiting or by decreasing phospholamban proteins, they actually causes more release of the calcium, more storage of the calcium by SARCA2. You know that sarcoplasmic reticulum calcium transporter, calcium channel protein. Another very important thing is that they causes more expression of a myosin heavy chain alpha subtype. So they are also responsible for more contractility. Okay, so this in brief, basically this in brief. And they also are having a permissive effect of sympathetic nervous system. So patients having deficiency of the thyroid hormone, such patients having more slower type. Why? Because sympathetic system or any rush situation, they are slow type. Why? Because thyroid hormone having a permissive effect on the sympathetic system, so they more enhances the sympathetic nervous system activity. They actually they causes more prompt response of sympathetic nervous system activity. Now metabolic effects, many metabolic effects are there. In short, I am focusing on that protein metabolism. If you know that, they enhances that carbohydrate metabolism, protein metabolism. They causes that more expression of LDL receptor on the hepatocyte, more reuptake of the LDL cholesterol, So LDL cholesterol level will be decreased. Triglyceride clearance also increased. So patients having deficiency of the thyroid hormone, they have deranged lipid, plasma lipid levels, like higher level of triglyceride, higher level of LDL. So that is why thyroid hormone deficiency itself causes more atherogenesis. And if you supplement, if you replace that thyroid deficiency state by exogenous thyroid hormone administration, so patients actually recover. So many of the times during a diagnosis, if you advise your patients to do a lipid profile, you can find out they all have more triglyceride, more LDL, and this does not require treatment with lipid lowering drugs. Itself, if you give thyroid hormone, they normalizes the lipid level. That is very interesting point. You should not give statin or other lipid lowering drugs in that situation. Okay. Now, what is about thyroid hypofunction? Hypofunction, obviously hypofunction. Ultimately, you know that less thyroid hormones in the circulation. So this hypofunction may be primary in that sense, defect in the thyroid gland itself. These may be central in the form of secondary and tertiary. So defects at the pituitary level, defects at the that hypothalamus level. If there is very rare, obviously deficiency of TSAs or TRAs, or there may be receptor level change. Basically, say TSA is receptor, they have Z protein coupled receptor, ZS type. So that receptor may be mutated, or that receptor may be hyperfunctioning. So we coming later. So this is hypofunction. So that may be hypofunction due to mutation, that may happen. So this is the points actually. When you thought of hypofunction, you have to thought of level of thyroid, at the level of pituitary, at the level of hypothalamus. Is at the level of that at the level of thyroid, TSH level will be high. At the level of pituitary, that the TSH will be deficient. Okay, so we will follow that algorithm in subsequent section. Thyroid hormone hyperfunction, most common cause is Graves' disease, or there may be temporary thyroid hormone hyperfunction due to administration of excess amount of the T4 T3, or thyroiditis, maybe subclinical thyroiditis, subacute thyroiditis, or thyroiditis due to exogenous drug administration, maybe like amiodarone. You know that antiarrhythmic drug amiodarone. Many of the times they may cause hypothyroidism, but amiodarone contain lots of iodide. Certain periods of time, they may cause even thyroid toxicity. So we have said iodide causes thyroid constipation. So if you give excessive iodide, thyroid hormone constipating effect, we have termed Wolff-Chaikoff effect. But after a certain period of time, there is excessive accumulation of the iodide, and after certain months, that will be converted into T4 T3, and excessive T4 T3 will be released. So that inhibition will not actually permanent. At a certain period of time, there is excessive generation of T4 T3, that is called Jod-Bezdo effect. Okay, this is opposite to Wolff-Chaikoff effect. Now, uses of thyroid hormone. What are the uses of thyroid hormone? If you come into this portion, actually, thyroid hormone replacement therapy in hypothyroidism. Hypothyroidism is the most common condition. So we have to replace thyroid hormone. What hormone we replace? Levothyroxine. That is a synthetic analog of thyroxine that is normally present in our body. Levothyroxine. That is similar to that of normal one. Okay. So thyroid hormone replacement therapy in hypothyroidism, that is an important point. Then hypothyroidism in pregnancy. So many of the times women does not have manifestation, but during pregnancy it is manifested because of excess requirement, change in the metabolism due to hyperestrogenemia. There will be more synthesis of thyroxine binding globulin because of estrogen stimulate the hepatocyte to synthesize more protein, plasma proteins. That may cause more bound form of the hormone, so free form will be decreased. So apparent manifestation may happen. But replacement in pregnancy is very important because it is related to the development, growth and development in the fetus. Now come to the congenital hypothyroidism. This is very important point, congenital hypothyroidism. So congenital hypothyroidism, because if you do not replace very urgently, there will be permanent delay in the neuronal development. This is called cretinism. So how to diagnose congenital hypothyroidism? So after birth, all the baby you should screen TSH with T4, T3 measurements to diagnose any congenital hypothyroidism or not. Okay, so this diagnosis is very important and we have to replace immediately relatively at higher doses to prevent the retardation in growth and development. This is very important. Any delay ultimately causes intellectual impairment. Now subclinical hypothyroidism is one entity. So subclinical hypothyroidism is like that. Patient does not have any clinical manifestation, but after biochemical investigation we have diagnosed. In that situation, we have to assess the patient condition and depending on the clinical judgment we have to replace. Then myxedema coma on medical emergency of hypothyroidism, extreme hypothyroidism. We discuss in detail myxedema coma. Benign thyroid nodules. So many of the times, thyroid nodule formation happen because of the less T4, T3 in the peripheral circulation, more TSH generation that causes trophic stimulation to the thyroid gland, formation of the thyroid nodule. So this is the most common simple thyroid nodule formation. We have to replace thyroxine, so that nodule gradually regress until and unless it is not converted to the multinodular goiter. So that multinodular goiter where the surgical intervention we have to take, but simple nodule usually regress. So if you do not neglect, usually does not go into multinodular goiter. Then thyroid cancer. So this is a certain point. Why in thyroid cancer you have to give thyroid hormone actually? This is basically after surgical treatment. So after surgical treatment we have to replace because we have thyroidectomy. Depending on the different grades, partial thyroidectomy, subtotal thyroidectomy, total thyroidectomy, different grades of thyroidectomy learn in surgery. But thing is that thyroid cancer after surgery we have to replace with T4. Why? Because there may be some little bit remnants glands may be there. We have to replace with T4. If you replace with T4, that T4 causes feedback inhibition on the pituitary. There will be less generation of the TSH because the TSH is the trophic hormone to the thyroid, and that is many of the times responsible for the generation of the thyroid tumor because that is the trophic hormone. Like in the ovarian tumor, FSH is the predominant factor. They stimulate ovary for malignant transformation because that is the trophic hormone. Here also TSH is the trophic hormone to the thyroid. They actually causes cell proliferation. So that is why we have to inhibit cell proliferation by depleting TSH level in the blood, and that is why you have to replace T4 T3 so that it inhibit trophic hormone level. So that is very important point. Explain why question come in the surgery itself. In thyroid cancer we have to give thyroid replacement. Even patient does not require, we have to give because of fear that we should not elevate TSH level. Okay, so this is in brief. If examiner asks what are the uses of thyroid hormones, you have to enumerate very simple points, but you have to thought logically. Okay, so these are the thyroid hormones and uses, all related to the hypothyroidism. Okay, most of the times related to the hypothyroidism. Pregnancy on certain points we want to add that pregnancy hypothyroidism, particularly say here the pregnancy hypothyroidism, we have to treat very urgently, and TSH level we have to maintain very strict TSH, usually in the range of 1 to 1.5. Usually it should be TSH level after treatment, it should be less than 6 milli international unit per liter. So it should be a very lower level because of that situation. Basically in the normal people, the 2 to 3, 3 to 4 is sufficient, but in pregnancy we have to maintain 1 to 1.5. because of that it should not impair the growth and development of the newborn basically. So you have to maintain a strict level, and in the pregnancy there is lots of changes itself, the binding also increase, so we have to give a higher doses, basically relatively higher doses, and we have to monitor the TSH level at least 4 to 6 weeks interval. Usually TSH we monitor at interval of 6 weeks because we have to give at least 6 weeks time uh, of the thyroid hormone uh, to achieve its steady state concentration, because it have itself 1 week is the T half. Okay, so 1 week is the itself is the T half. So you have to say, like say you are given thyroxine and asking your patient to measure TSH after 2 weeks, no value basically, no value, because it should first achieve steady state level. As you know, steady state at least 4 to 5 T half should be allowed. Okay, so it itself, you know that it having a 1 week itself is T half, so at least 5 weeks. So that is why we have said 1 month to 6 weeks give time to do a next TSH assessment. When it is steady for long periods of time, we can check 6 monthly, then 1 yearly, depending on the scenario. But in pregnancy we have to very rapidly, every 1 month usually we have to do the TSH monitoring along with the other test. Okay, so these are the uses of the thyroid hormones. Okay, now come to the certain pharmacological therapeutical aspects, very important in day-to-day clinical practice. Like say factors influencing the oral levothyroxine therapy. Patient will ask many questions: how to take, what are the drugs we should avoid, what are the food products we should avoid. So this is also important, we have to advise to patients also. Like impaired levothyroxine absorption. So certain drugs, if you patient taking proton pump inhibitors, because these drugs taken most of the time, sucralfate, okay, aluminum containing antacids. If patients taking this drug along with levothyroxine, bioavailability of levothyroxine will decrease. So that ultimately, your beneficial effect will be decreased. You cannot maintain the normal TSH level. Okay, that is our desired endpoint basically here. So proton pump inhibitors, they actually reduces the absorption. So this is very important basically in that sense. You have to counsel your patient that how to take. So many patients require proton pump inhibitors. So how to take? If it is not so much essential, should not give proton pump inhibitors or acid neutralizing drugs. If patient require it, then first give levothyroxine at the morning, because levothyroxine is a drug, it is taken at morning. So at morning, then allow the patients 20 to 30 minutes, then take proton pump inhibitors. So in that time, you know that most of the levothyroxine will be absorbed. You know, levothyroxine has very good oral viability, at least 80%. Okay. So other drugs like, you know, phosphate binders like sevelamar, they impair that because they complex with the drug basically. Like food, you know, that soy products may be there. So on food products, you know that cruciferous diets, we have said the cruciferous diets like cabbage, cauliflower, you know that broccoli, they having excess amounts of thiocyanate or cruciferin, they contain basically, they inhibit iodine trapping and thyroid hormone biosynthesis process, they inhibit basically. Okay, so that diet patients have to say that vegetables should be avoided itself. Soy products is not so much contraindicated, but little bit restriction should be there. And among these drug we have discussed these things. Okay, so this conversion is inhibited by amiodarone, we have said. The rifampicin also a metabolism inducer here, phenytoin, that in drug-drug interaction we have said. The same thing here also applicable. So this is a very common brand name, Thyronorm. Okay, lots of denominations are there from 12.5, 25, 50, 62.5, okay, 75, 88, okay, then your 100, 125, 150, such dose denominations are available. We have to titrate depending on that drug. So one important thing here we have to say, some patients having very high grades of hypothyroidism. So how you can understand? From clinical phases. Okay, and also patients may have very severe degree of hypothyroidism, may have elevated levels of skeletal muscle released enzymes, okay, like LDAs, muscle specific LDAs, and also CPK, okay, CPK enzyme, okay, creatine kinase, CK enzyme or CPK enzyme. They are muscle released enzyme, particular isomer of muscle, actually MB variant. So such levels, when it is very high, patient may present with even myopathy, neuropathy. Okay, so such patients, usually an elderly patients having underlying cardiac disorders, such patients, when you replace levothyroxine, we have to start with a very low dose. Say you have calculated a patient's require say 100 microgram levothyroxine. In elderly patient, you should not start with 100 microgram. You should start with 25 microgram. After 1 week, then increase to 50 microgram. Then after 1 week, increase to 75 microgram. After 1 week, then go for 100 microgram. You should not start abruptly. Why? Because if you start thyroid hormone abruptly, sudden increase in metabolic activity, sudden increase in sympathetic nervous system activity, so they may cause precipitation of cardiac failure, or patient may having angina, chest pain because of higher sympathetic activity. So these things you should keep in your mind, particularly in elderly patients or patients having arrhythmia, arrhythmic disorders. Say patients having having silent type of atrial fibrillation, they may develop sudden uh, uh, that sudden precipitation of that silent atrial fibrillation to ventricular tachycardia, okay, because of increased pulse propagation through the AV node basically. So AV nodal barrier will be removed. So this situation we should keep in your mind during therapy. Okay, now hypothyroidism, the clinical phases. We have certain symptoms and signs, that the tiredness, weakness, okay, dry skin, feeling cold, hair loss, constipation, okay, weight gain, poor appetite. Among the signs, that coarse facial features, puffy face, that is called myxedema, okay, due to the deposition of that uh, that ground substance underlying the skin, chondroitin sulfate, or this ground substance deposition, because of their decreased clearance, they accumulated actually. Okay, bradycardia, peripheral edema, carpal tunnel syndrome, this is a peripheral neuropathy. Okay, delayed tendon reflex relaxation, particularly very important reflex we try to examine in clinics, that that ankle reflex. So ankle reflex is very much representative the degree of hypothyroidism. So delayed ankle reflex is very important. Okay, particularly the reproductive function is very important. Menorrhagia, amenorrhea, such presentation may be there. Okay, so overall, thyroid, in thyroid hormone, the symptom signs is basically highly, actually in that sense, truly represent. They highly represent basically the underlying disease process. Even the biochemical parameters truly represent these symptoms and signs. They tell. So sometimes patients presenting with constipation, so you have to thought of there may be hypothyroidism. Patient with diarrhea, hypothyroidism. So it actually, these clinical signs symptoms truly represent that underlying metabolic abnormalities. So in thyroid, patient signs symptoms truly represent underlying disease process. So like in diabetes, it is not always like that. In diabetes, it is not always like that. Although hypothyroidism, particularly subclinical hypothyroidism, it is silent for long periods of time. Okay, we cannot recognize actually. Okay, so overall, these signs symptoms will read carefully. We have discussed some important things. Okay, there may be loss of eyelashes itself, maybe there facial features or coarse facial features are there. So this is very important. How to calculate the levothyroxine replacement dose? This is a standard dose, 1.7 microgram per kg body weight per day. This is the replacement dose we have to calculate as per body weight. Okay. So some clinical aspects we have discussed. The bradycardia on thing is also very important actually. Just measuring pulse rate, you can actually you can see patients having hypothyroidism. When you replace the drug, pulse rate gradually increase. When patients say if you administer more amount of drug, patients will complain palpitation and you can elicit the sign tachycardia. Okay, so thyroid hormone actually truly represent the clinical signs symptoms, what you are finding. You cannot hide actually. So very important. Now, how to evaluate a patient of hypothyroidism? Just algorithm. Very simple algorithm. To measure TSH first. If it is elevated, they have to suspect hypothyroidism. Then measure unbound T4. Nowadays, total T4 have little value. Nowadays it is free, FT4. We say we represent FT4, FT3. Free T4, free T3. Because of the advance in the biochemical detection methods, that is actually detected by filtration process, basically free drug we can actually measure. So that is used because that truly represents the situation. FT3, FT4. Okay. So if it is T4 is less, that means low, we have to suspect primary hypothyroidism because TSH is elevated, so pituitary response is normal. So T4 is low, that means a defect at the level of the thyroid. Then we have to measure this antibody, TPO antibody, thyroid peroxidase antibody. Okay, if it is positive, then you have to suspect autoimmune hypothyroidism, most commonly Hashimoto's thyroiditis. So Hashimoto's thyroiditis, one of the important cause of hypothyroidism, particularly autoimmune hypothyroidism, Hashimoto's thyroiditis. So here the TPO antibody, thyroid peroxidase antibody, that means antibody against thyroid peroxidase enzyme that is normally present, in the thyroid follicle. Okay, so then we have to replace. Ultimately, treatment is very similar. Okay, even it is Hashimoto's thyroiditis, we have to T4 replacement, but Hashimoto's thyroiditis have increased chance of subsequent development of thyroid malignancy. That is why we have to screen, you have to follow the patient regularly. Okay, then TSA is normal, but T4 level low. So in this scenario, then you have to rule out the drug effects or other rare cause. Sick euthyroid syndrome is there. So patients having chronic disorders, sometimes they have a hypothyroidism. So that is called sick hypothyroidism syndrome basically. Okay, a sick euthyroid syndrome. In that sense, basically there is a certain disturbances in thyroid hormone level function and their synthesis that is actually corrected after treatment of underlying condition basically. Okay, so hypothyroidism, in this way you have to differentiate between is it primary, is it central. So in central, we have TSH level is low and that may leads to low T4 level basically. So in that scenario, if you administer TSH, so there is increased response. In that we can diagnose the condition and ultimately treatment is very similar. We have to give T4. Okay, so this is in very short actually uh, evaluation, but this is very important. We should not do irrelevant test. Okay, very simple test, few tests are there, we have to do that. Now myxedema coma, we have said this is a extreme spectrum of hypothyroidism. This is not very common condition, this is very rare condition, and it is mostly in elderly people, neglected elderly people particularly. So they are neglected in that sense, their medical care is not proper, their relatives uh, not taking care actually, uh, they're neglected at their home, so they are not taking the drug properly or they are not diagnosed underlying condition. So in such patients, particularly during winter, they may develop myxedema coma. That means severe grades of hypothyroidism, or there may be other precipitating factors like respiratory infections, sepsis, or even myocardial infarction. They may precipitate that hypothyroidism condition into myxedema coma. Why we have given such a name, myxedema? So myxedema, that represent hypothyroidism because of myxomatous tissue, thickening of the skin, coarse facial features, thickening over the shin area, in the tibia shin area. There is a skin thickening basically. Okay, so that is why it is called myxedema. Patients develop a non-pitting edema. This edema, cardiovascular edema, is different. This is a non-pitting edema. Okay, so what we can say? Extreme expression of severe long-standing hypothyroidism. Even best treatment, ICU setup, all the treatment you have done properly, ventilatory supports you have given, even 60% mortality rate. Okay, so because of the underlying precipitating factors, patients are not diagnosed at proper time, reporting also delayed due to that reason. And hypothermia, patients may develop severe degree of hypothermia, may reach a temperature below 30 degrees centigrade, even 23 degrees centigrade. So severe, extreme hypothermia patient may develop. So in the general measures, we have to prevent hypothermia. We have to provide external warming. There are some external warmer. So if you go to the particularly CCU ICU setup, sometimes we give external warming by blowing hot air over the patient and wrapping the patient with some plastic material. They actually are tubing material. They actually causes uh, flow of hot air over the patient. So they actually maintain the normal body temperature. So that is called external warming. Okay, or you may elevate the itself the room temperature. It's very simple. Now rapid replacement is very important. Rapid replacement of levothyroxine by IV route. Okay, followed by daily full replacement dose. Okay, so this levothyroxine IV route is very important. Okay, if you do not able to give by IV route, you may give by nasogastric tube, by oral route, but that absorption is unpredictable. Because of this situation, patients may be in cardiovascular shock, so gastrointestinal circulation also impaired. So IV administration is better. Sometimes liothyronine T3 is preferred. Why T3 is preferred? Because T3 is the ready-made active form. So in the body, T4 will convert to the T3. Because patients having a hypometabolic state, that conversion may be delayed. So for getting rapid response, T3 can be given, but T3 problem is that liothyronine may precipitate cardiac arrhythmia. This is the problem basically. That is why some physician or some center does not recommend. But liothyronine can be given if you do not get adequate response from levothyroxine. IV or nasogastric tube you can give. Okay. Then you have to add hydrocortisone parenteral route. Why we given hydrocortisone? Because these patient basically also having decreased function of adrenal cortices. Okay, so these patients having a chance also hypofunction of adrenal cortices. Okay, so these patients may have underlying Addisonian crisis. Okay, so this hydrocortisone helps to tide over this acute condition and also replace hypocortisolism. This is a very concomitant condition in mixed edema. IV fluids, okay, sometimes hypertonic saline. So IV fluids particularly along with hypertonic saline, you may add glucose also, because these patients also having hypoglycemia. So glucose administration is very important. Treatment of precipitating factors and ventilatory support if required, along with frequent ABG analysis. So mixed edema coma management, exam point of view, very important. It is actually asked in university question very repeatedly. So management of patients with mixed edema coma. So usually a history given, neglected patients with hypothyroidism, not taking the drug and present to the emergency with unconsciousness, hypothermia, hypoglycemia, okay, and very low pulse and blood pressure. So you have to suspect, you have to thought of mixed edema. Although there may be other conditions, maybe there are unconscious, maybe due to many other reasons, deselective and other things. But there will be certain hints: neglected elder individuals with hypothermia, okay, hypoventilation, along with there may be, even in these patients also deselective hypoglycemia. Okay, so patients having decreased blood glucose level also. So these all together history, we have to thought of myxedema coma. So we have to thought of myxedema coma. So hypoventilation, decreased blood glucose level, hypothermia, neglected elderly patients. Certain when we get these terminologies, you have to thought of myxedema coma, and you have to write this management. Overall management, there is not so much of drugs, but these general measures and other things, IV fluids, precipitating factor treatment, external warming, this point matter. Okay, so today we discuss up to this point myxedema coma. In the subsequent topic, we go for antithyroid drugs and other important medical conditions related to that. Thyroid and related topics are very important. Exam point of view, simple, but many important thing we have to understand. We should not neglect this simple thing. We have to understand in a precise, finer way. Okay, obviously we will get many questions from this topic, and in day-to-day clinical practice, understanding this topic is very important. Thank you very much. We are welcome. You are welcome to ask question. I have said you should ask question. Some point you may not actually able to elaborate or not able to explain properly. So you should ask question. Thank you very much.